Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the pod. If you're listening here on audio today we have an extremely special guest. This is Jimmy. He is the founder and CEO of GlassHous. Today, we're going to talk a lot about digital door knocking, how to kind of be in the middle of doing that outbound, but doing it in the right way so that you're not talking to broke people and dealing with people who are not going to be the best fit or who you don't want to deal with, but also how you can use that data to fuel your marketing efforts on Facebook ads, Google, stuff like that, to basically just provide good services in the neighborhoods you want to be working in. So, welcome. Thank you for taking the time today, Jimmy. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. I think usually I like to start this off for those who may not know who you are. Is it possible for you to give us just a quick summary?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I'm the founder, the CEO here at GlassHous. I'm based in Nashville. About 15 years of experience in B2B sales, mostly for software. I helped scale and build a couple of different sales revenue organizations as a VP and a chief revenue officer to almost $1 billion of total enterprise value.
Awesome. So how did Glass House start? Like, well, what happened there?
I had a friend who knew a guy who owned a pest control company, and they approached me. They were like, "Hey, we have these problems with our one gentleman has this problem with trying to like identify the right customers." And so, like, what does that even mean? Like, what are the right customers? Like, well, do they pay me? Can they afford my services? You know, all this kind of like, how do I work with the people I ultimately want to work with? And so I started just digging into that problem, researching it, learning all about it, and went on this big journey for 6 months of R&D, at the end of which we kind of came up with really an understanding that the market had this big gap where people like pest control, roofing, painting, really any home service business are mostly just kind of like doing a lot of spray and pray. And there was a real gap in how targeted can we get. And then I also really learned a lot about like, how a home service business thinks in terms of customer acquisition costs and speed to lead. And I bought a home service business along the way, so I could
Okay.
learn all about it. So really kind of fell in love with that, with the industry. Now I'm an owner operator as well. And so just trying to solve those problems, but started from hey, I want to work with the right people and just kind of saying, well, what would that mean?
Okay. So the main problem that you guys solve for these home service businesses, would it be more so on the outbound side or on, combining that outbound and I like the term on your website, digital door knocking. I thought that was great. I think that's a great way to describe this. Um, you know, is your benefit that you guys are combining the both of those, or how does that all kind of work?
We don't think you should turn off marketing. Like first and foremost, just to be clear, like marketing is super important in any business. But we just feel like there's a gap in when you talk about omni-channel or you talk about everything marketing, you talk about, being everywhere in home services, that tends to mean every inbound platform, every marketing platform. So you have to be on Angie and you have to be on Google and you have to be on Yelp and you have to get the reviews and then you have to do the physical signs and you've got to mail them stuff. And all of this stuff is be everywhere except for emailing prospects around your existing customers, picking up the phone and calling people, SMS
Yeah.
texting people next door to the job you're working on. Like there's this big slice of the everything pie
Yeah.
that isn't filled. So what we do is we fill that slice to then
Okay.
basically completely round out the whole thing.
Okay. I feel like no, I'm going to ask you almost for like some advice here based on all the people you work with, all the people that you see. Okay. Most of, at least the guys that we talk to, they're kind of in that like 250 to $750,000 a year mark where they're doing good. They have like one or two crews that they're working with.
Mm.
Um, they're pretty much largely based off of referrals. But they want to get to that, 1.5, 2.5, $5 billion a year business. With all the people that you've worked with, what are kind of the main differences that are keeping people under that $1 million a year?
What I generally see is that the world is not built to be differentiated at that size. If you have 200, 300, couple $100,000 of revenue, you cannot afford to do like super big ad campaigns. You can't buy out Google in your market. You're not necessarily going to be able to be everywhere. You can't do every channel. If you have $20 million of revenue, you're a big player in a market,
Yeah.
then you have a really big competitive moat called your spend. And you got all these smaller players trying to bust through that. If you're going to spend $1,000 a month on, kind of Google ads or something like that, it's probably not going to do very much. Or Facebook, it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard for that to break through. And it's a really noisy market now. Lots of people have showed up.
Yeah.
And so I look at my own home service businesses, and it's in the window washing space.
Okay.
And what we do is we look at having launched that business over the last year. It's also not that big, right? It's in the size you just talked about.
Yeah.
And because we started from scratch.
Mhm.
And so what I looked at was, how am I going to actually get into the market in a different way? And that is where digital door knocking, that's like part of the premises we're going to use as software, was how do we show up a little different than everybody else at a kind of better cost? And when you go back to all those platforms, you go back through Angie and Google and all the review emphasis that's happened over the last 5 or 10 years,
Mhm.
when each of those things got introduced to home services, they were relatively new and novel. The costs were relatively low, and you could show up and be the first to market with that strategy.
Yes.
But are you going to be the first to market with a get a lot of review strategy today? No, your big competitor in the market probably has 10,000 of them already.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be the first to market with using Angie. That kind of has already played itself out. And you're not going to be the first to market with a lot of these things. So what can you do that gives you the ability to be a little bit different, maybe adopt a new strategy that hasn't been saturated inside the market? And that's where I think, whether it be digital door knocking, which we're big proponents of, or really anything that you can do inside your market that isn't just how do I act exactly like the bigger players, but with just less money,
Yeah.
because you're just not going to get the same results as them.
Mhm.
If you want to play their game, they have an unfair advantage.
Yeah. It is, regardless of if we like it or not, we're in a situation where if you pay the most for the lead, you get the lead. This is an auction. So if you're bidding against the house, it's gonna be pretty hard to, succeed with that strategy. I understand what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, if you're playing their game, it's built for them to win.
Yeah. Okay.
And Google has created a really big ecosystem that is to their benefit, right? They make a lot of money off this. All these platforms do. And there's nothing wrong with making a lot of money, but it means that if you are a smaller player, simply going out there with a gun or a knife to a gunfight, basically, it's just going to be really, really tough. And then you end up kind of running around chasing a lot of really poor quality opportunities.
Okay. Now, I think it would be helpful for everyone here if we just kind of pause real quick and identify what exactly do you mean when you say digital door knocking? What exactly are you guys doing here in like the cold/warm outbound area to provide that service?
Yeah. So when you think about what are the two big lead sources for home service businesses? You have trying to get the phone to ring, trying to get the inbound activities. We just talked about that, right? And then you kind of run down to what you could loosely call like the human-based marketing aspects. So door knocking falls squarely into that, right? So it's going and knocking doors, literally, going to B&I groups, going and talking to people at your church, going to a home show, like all the physical stuff that a human being has to be present to do.
Yes.
And so we call it digital door knocking because one, it has a great ring to it. It sounds
Yeah, it
great.
does.
But it kind of encompasses one of the most easily understood aspects of the human-based activity. And what we're creating is, how do you take that exact activity, but digitize the outbound process so that it's not just how many doors can you knock? Because a person doesn't really scale very well, and labor is just more and more expensive every year, right? So that strategy, it's just a really, really old one. It can work, but it's really expensive. You need a bunch of cash to do it.
Yeah.
And so if you want to knock 100 doors a day, you need one person. 200 doors a day takes two people, three, four, five, so on and so forth. But when you're at my house, working in my home for any home service, the best possible prospects are right around you, right? They are the closest 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 houses, whatever the range of your service really reflects. If you're doing my roof, the other houses are the same age. They probably need a roof. If you're doing my AC, all the ACs are probably the same age. They probably need inspections or tune-ups or whatever the heck that thing is, right? So This is a great opportunity. You also have a crew in the area. So if you're mowing my lawn, it'd be great to just mow the neighbor's lawn.
Yeah.
The way that we've done that historically in our industry is to train techs and reps who aren't necessarily hired to be salespeople. Maybe they don't even want to, but we train them to go to the three closest houses,
Yeah.
drop a yard sign, right? We understand the concept, but we apply completely inefficient human-based processes. And so what we mean by digital door knocking is taking that exact same benefit and then saying, if we can unlock all of those houses, emails, phone numbers, right? We can basically create geo-targeting around those jobs and do outreach from a platform, from
Mhm.
software. This is where I take my background in outbound software sales, because that's how we
Okay.
run it.
Yeah.
Is okay, when you're doing a job at my house, here's the 10, 20, 50 closest neighbors. They should all have an email from you. They should all have a
Yeah.
text message from you, and they should all get a phone call from you the day that your crew is going out, because we are going to create a lead from a lead from a lead from a lead, and everything becomes more efficient.
Okay. So basically, instead of, if I go do a job in a nice neighborhood, there's another 50 houses in that neighborhood that I'd like to connect with. They're all about the same age or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, Through your platform, you can identify their name, phone number, email, some of that stuff to start that cold outreach campaign, just to make sure we're all on the same page here, right?
Correct. That's exactly
Okay.
correct. But it also is important to understand that in home services, there's unique aspects in terms of you're selling to a person, you're selling to me or you, but you're also servicing the home. Now, the home doesn't buy the service, it doesn't make decisions, but the
Yeah.
person doesn't receive the service. Like it's not like cutting hair, right? It's like
Yeah.
so you have to understand both components to really target correctly.
Yeah.
If I want it, if this neighborhood's really good fit for me, why? The house is the right size, they're the right age, they have the right roofing materials, the people make the right amount of money, the home value is high enough, the yards are big enough. You want to be able to do all that intelligence so that when you are doing that targeting, it is combining all the data that helps you basically go after the places you want to go after. Like you said at the beginning, right? I want that
Yeah.
neighborhood is perfect for me. I could go and try and knock on doors, which people hate, by the way, and neighborhoods don't want you to do. You can't do it in my neighborhood. Or we could digitally outreach to them, and then I'm efficiently canvassing that entire area, and I didn't even have to leave the office to do it.
So, what are all the data points that you can actually get? If I were to use this software, like what can I get off of the the neighborhood? Can I get their, obviously their name, phone number, and email? Like, where's this all coming from? How are you getting this?
So we have to collect this from a whole bunch of different places. And so
Okay.
we are buying some data, we are scraping data. It's all publicly available information that is being aggregated, stitched together. And then it all has to get run through kind of aggregation and, large language model, all this stuff to basically look at how do we ensure that we are taking the right pieces from each of these different sources. And, people move and people's phone numbers change,
Yeah.
emails change. And so we have to track all that stuff. And so that's the hard part, is organizing it all. In terms of what we can collect for our customers, it's hundreds of data points. I mean, do you want to know uh, when was the last time that permitting was pulled on something, like a roof or something? What was the roof made out of? When was the house built? When did they move in? How long have they lived there? What is the person's age, in terms of like age range? All kinds of things about the consumer, their social media. I want to go look at their
Mhm.
LinkedIn. How do they review other businesses? This is an important one. When you think about going after the right
Yeah.
customers, which is where we
Yeah.
started with this,
Yeah.
well, the right customers for me give great reviews. They're easy to work with. They pay their bills. The wrong customers for me are difficult to work with. They're never satisfied, and they generally contest every bill. And you can see that in people's Google review feedback, and then just steer right around that.
Yeah. Yeah. Those people are not worth working with. Sometimes you can never make, those people happy.
If you want to make everybody happy, you should sell ice cream, not do home service.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
you probably can't make everybody happy, but on top of that, is your service designed for every single consumer? You're selling super high end something, then there's this group that's not for you. You're selling volumetric, the lowest price in town, and you are basically modeled on that. Then are you targeting the most expensive houses in the area, or do you want to do the highest possible volume? Right? Like, what are you selling? And we call it in home services your customer avatar, your ideal customer avatar.
Yeah.
Well, if you've defined that, then plug that into who you're going to go attack, and then get the emails, get the phone numbers, get the names, get the addresses, get all the stuff you need to go actually do it
Yeah.
once you understand where I need to go to get them.
Okay. So once you gather the data, I kind of want to walk through this whole process step by step, just in this example scenario here, for everybody listening. So once, let's say I go, I paint the exterior of a house. All right,
Yep.
did a good job, got a good Google review. There's about 100 people in the neighborhood that I'd like to connect with. All right, so I go on to GlassHous, you know, look at some of these people, have a couple of filters. Now what? I can do SMS campaigns, I can do email campaigns, I can physically call them. Like, are those what are kind of the options for outreach, and what are you seeing in success for those outreach options?
So I would think of it in terms of, and this is just not even unique to our software, by the way. Like, just if you're doing targeting, I like to think of it in a three-step process.
Mhm.
Where do I want to go? So one of the best places I always say is start with where you are, start with where you have a customer. It's a great place to start. You're physically there. You hopefully have a reference. They're going to see your van. All those things start to combine and play together so you
Okay.
can create virality. So where are we going? So we map that. In our system, it's a nice, beautiful map. You drop the pin. Here it is.
Yeah.
Then who? Who do I want to go after? Okay. Filter that group down, right? So now you're thinking home age, income level, when did they move? What's the thing made out of, right? Like,
Yep.
filter the list down for me. Also, you got to do a bunch of compliance stuff that's super not fun. DNC list management, scrubbing bad email addresses, like all this big data problem. So who should I actually email, including
Yeah.
who should I not?
Yeah.
And then how? How am I outbounding them and how is it going?
Hmm.
And you would want to manage that usually in like some type of stage gated funnel or a CRM type of system,
Yeah.
but you shouldn't put cold leads into your field management system or your CRM. Whatever you use to run your customer jobs, putting cold leads in there is generally considered a big no-no and like a not a good practice because they're going to just get constantly caught up in a bunch of reporting when they're not real yet. You need to warm them up somewhere else.
Hmm.
And so that's what we are big proponents of is where am I going? Who am I attacking? That means all the filtering and the data problem. And then how am I doing it is I want to email them, I want to SMS them, and I want to call them. And usually we see like the best process is to have a like a multi-touch process. We send everybody gets an email, then they get a phone call. If we can't get in touch with them with a phone call, they get an SMS. So we've touched everybody three times. We might touch them in multiple emails. We don't touch them with multiple SMS. They might get a couple of phone calls if they haven't answered yet, but we certainly don't call them back if they said no. And those are all happening in about a 1 to 2 week rolling process, which can generally yield a 1 to 2% conversion rate.
Okay.
And if you think about that from a home services business, and what you just said is, I just did this painting job and I got 100 houses in the area, a 1 to 2% conversion rate.
Yeah, it's about one or two more houses. Yeah.
So I turn every job into one or two more. In fact, if I could just go one for one,
Yeah.
then I could basically take, whatever leads I currently have in my business and double the business and just keep going and going and going.
Hmm. Okay. Now, I do want to walk through those numbers a little bit here because I think a lot of people, from a cold outreach perspective, maybe they're used to working on like referrals or something like that, and they're like, I don't want to do cold outreach. I only want to talk to people who want to do business with me.
Mhm.
I think that is kind of like the attitude here for some people. What would you say to somebody in that position that like, how this can be beneficial to them? Maybe that first job was a referral, but
Yeah.
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with getting referrals. You're going to be a little bit more limited in how fast you can grow your business if you are doing it word of mouth because you don't have as much control over the pace of what's going to
Mhm.
happen. Um, those might win at a higher rate. They'll be lower volume. So depending on your size and scale, is that enough to support you as a solopreneur, you by yourself? Very well could be. Now, when you have multiple teams, you have to think about multiple channels, right?
Yeah.
Stacking different revenue channels on top of each other. Word of mouth might get difficult depending on your average ticket size, I suppose.
Yeah.
And again, these things all support each other. Like what I see is word of mouth and doing outbound to a community, even if it's just, even if you only picked email, said, listen, I'm only going to do the email outbound. I don't want to call people. I don't want to SMS them. Well, that's still creating more awareness so that the word of mouth and the email play together. Hey, you mentioned my business and someone saw an email and they saw the van out in the neighborhood. Like all of these things play together. Lots of statistics around it takes 7, 10, 12, 14 touches to get someone to actually take an action. You're just creating more touches.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the things that either you guys with GlassHous, what you're doing on your software, or what are some of the things that people can do to actually increase that conversion rate, get more people to open the emails, get more people to answer the text messages? I have a funny story. So when I was looking for guests for this show, for this podcast, I reached out to about 50 people, that I thought could provide value to the community. And nobody responded to me. So I went back and I looked at my email and I rewrote my email. And then in the title, I put like in parentheses, I put like, I don't know if you saw this or it was someone from your team, but like I put, this is not a scam. And then on the email body, I just put like, hey, we've done episodes with, this person, that person, whatever, to
Mhm.
try to, build credibility. And I got like 10 people that booked from it. So like I thought that was a great example of how, rewriting an email can make such a difference from a cold email standpoint.
Yeah. And by the way, I did skip that email and I did see this as a scam. And so I
Yeah,
did send it to my team who responded and set this up. So like it
yeah,
worked on me, right?
yeah,
If people say, "Oh, it's not gonna, outbound doesn't work," I'm like, it can. You just need to,
yeah,
do a better job at it. So we are a big proponent of what we call a 3 R's model for outbound, right?
okay,
So first and foremost, it has to be relevant. The more relevant and specific you can make the outreach, the more effective it's going to be. So when we think about hyper targeting,
hmm,
can you name the neighborhood they live in? We work with 7 other houses in that neighborhood. We've worked with the Speyer family next
yeah,
door. We're on this street. We're working on these 4 streets this week in your neighborhood. We'll be there on Tuesday.
yeah,
So when I think about a really well-crafted outbound email or text message campaign from our system, it
yeah.
has that hyper relevance, which comes from that hyper targeting capabilities that you want to have in that process. The second is its relationship. So it's not trying to transact through an email. No one's going to buy anything through an email. No one's going to
Yeah.
buy anything from your SMS. What you're trying to do is get another quote, another appointment. Can we stop by? Can we introduce ourselves? Because you're, in theory, already going to be out there or you have a reason to be reaching out. And the last is being reasonable in the amount and the type of outreach you do, right? So, you shouldn't be texting people 20 times. You shouldn't be calling them after they said not to. You should not be calling people on the DNC list. You should be respectful of how you would want to be treated as a consumer. You're in the home service industry. You're in a customer service industry. A lot of these are small, medium-sized businesses care deeply about their communities. And so you don't want to harass your neighbors. What
Yeah.
you want to do is offer something to help them. And so all of that plays together when you think about tight targeting, being relevant, building a relationship, and then being responsible in the type of outreach.
I think my favorite thing that you just said there was about how to hyper target and how important that is. Like I think a lot of people don't realize how important hyper targeting is about uh hey, we're in this exact neighborhood. Hey, this is exactly what we do. Hey, we just work with your friends down the street. That really helps to build that credibility and, get people to understand how you can service them and how you're not only just like an expert, but you're an expert in their exact needs in their exact neighborhood. It's kind of
Yeah,
like
we work with your specific type of house or
yeah,
like whatever you can do to make it more specific, or we're doing this service for this time of year. And like, these are tailoring all of that is really, really
yes.
important.
Yeah.
I get a lot of requests from our customers. Well, why can't I just email the whole zip code or why can't I text the whole city?
Yeah.
It's a common question.
Yeah.
And the answer is because we truly believe that if we opened up that ability, those customers would have probably the best month in their history of their business and then the worst year. So it would go from the best month to the worst year because you're basically taking all that targeting completely out of the process and you're just becoming a spammer and you're spamming a community with unrelevant messaging, hoping that kind of you can just grab some low-hanging fruit real fast, but you're not building a long-term relationship with those buyers.
Mhm. Okay. So what is that, we're looking at about a 1 or 2% conversion rate. Do you know what maybe the appointment set rate, like a good one to shoot for would be?
That's what we are shooting for is a 1 to 2% conversion rate
Yeah.
from I'm going to turn an appointment into an appointment into appointment. So it's usually one turns into 1 to 2 more additional appointments.
Okay. Do you notice a difference between the closing rate on those jobs between, other marketing channels or what you guys offer?
It depends on your service quite a bit, actually. So if you are in a more break fix type work, like HVAC, plumbing, these are there's a more of an emergency aspect to that. Then you are thinking about that relationship and what is the value of being introduced to a customer. You might not be able to do their rip and replace their AC unit that same day, but you
Mhm.
are able to come in and do the tune up and start put them in your list and then you stopping by and starting that conversation. So that has a longer tail on it. If you're doing more of an elective service like window washing or lawn care or pest control, then you can usually look at that as the people responding are looking for that service right now. And so the win rate generally reflects the same as you see from a lot of other sources. There's two things happening at the same time. Well, one, they are not self hand raisers or self identified. I'm looking for this the way that Google or Angie or other inbound platforms pretend to help you with.
Mhm.
They're not competitive opportunities. If I called you, then I'm now in a competition with me and nothing.
Okay.
If you raised your hand and go out and fill a bunch of forms on Angie and they sell that lead to 10 different people, then you're in a race to the bottom on price with 10 other people. The other part that plays in that with that is even if your win rate is moving a little bit up and down, if you're targeting better neighborhoods, your average deal size can go way up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you got to turn all those knobs and pull all those switches and all that stuff. But generally speaking, because these people are self-identifying from your outreach, they are still showing significant intent.
Yeah.
And that's why you should be able to win those things at roughly the same clip or start that relationship the same way you would with any other form of pay-per-click marketing and things like that.
Okay. Now, how does this actually combine with pay-per-click marketing? I mean, obviously that has a spot, Google, Facebook, all those things, they have a good spot. Um, but how does combining GlassHous and the audiences you can create and things like that, like how do those combine together to provide an even better marketing experience? And obviously they work in tandem. So
Yeah, well, it works in tandem, I think, from the omni-channel aspect of it. Playing together with pay-per-click is I think that when you look at doing large scale email outbound, then you are looking at that through a pay-per-click type of lens where you're saying, listen, there's 10,000 emails that are going out this month, and we're going to see, this percentage of click-throughs, and we're going to drive this much traffic back to our website. What would we have had to pay Google to create that much traffic? And depending on your vertical, you might be spending 5, 10, 15, $20 per click for a home service business, depending on your type of business, right? Pest control is
mhm,
going to be lower, HVACs might be a little bit higher. And that's just for them to click on your website. And then there's a conversion to actual fill out a form, and that might get into the hundreds of dollars for a lead.
mhm.
So if you're thinking about what's the cost to do email marketing, if it's targeted and it's well done, you can get that click cost down into like the pennies,
Wow.
buck
Yeah.
50, like really, really low.
Mhm.
And you're driving very passive interest. So you can look at part of this as basically the cheapest advertising channel you could have possibly invested in
Mhm.
versus having to get and far less competitive than places like Google where you can get outbid. No one can outbid you to get into someone's inbox. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Once you have the email, you can email them.
Mhm.
You can get outbid on Google, they just won't see you at all.
Yeah. Okay.
So I
Do
think it's
you
supportive of the whole thing, right? Like if I'm doing those Google ads, I also want to make sure they're seeing me. And I also then can look at that as saying every inbound that I create gives me another excuse to reach out to that area and
yeah.
create another outbound opportunity.
Do you think that an outbound strategy like this may benefit people in a larger market a little bit more because those people in those larger markets could be overshadowed by the big competitors a little bit more on Google, on Facebook, things like that?
Depends on what you mean by larger market. If you
Yeah.
are in an extremely small market, I mean, my wife grew up in a town with 2,000 people in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That's an extremely tiny market,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you could probably pay, $50 a day and be the top guy on Google forever.
But there's probably only like a couple of jobs a year, depending on what
Yeah.
you do, that need
Yeah.
service, right? So you're not only staying in that 2,000 person market, you're going
Yeah.
significantly further out. So I live in Nashville, 2.1 million people, plenty of market here. You go down to Chattanooga, far smaller, I think it's like 500 or 600,000 people, plenty of market there too. So you have to get pretty small before you're getting down into like sub 150,000 person markets where you're probably going and saying your size has to encompass multiple areas or much larger geographic territory.
Mhm.
Then, maybe at that point you're able to buy the market relatively efficiently and it doesn't matter as much. But most of the US or most of the people that are building larger businesses in home services are looking at it being somewhere around a large metropolitan or a somewhat larger city.
Okay. And what are some of the CRM features that you guys have available? Like once those leads actually come in on how people can manage them.
Again, back to that idea, like don't put cold leads in your CRM or your field service management is what I generally call them. I don't personally think of most back office tools for home services as CRMs.
Mhm.
They're really more about delivery. And this varies quite a bit from subvertical to subvertical. The ones in roofing tend to be a little more CRM because they're more project management based. The ones in ongoing services like window washing or pest control, or even like lawn care or HVAC and plumbing, they tend to be more about managing the field and the techs and delivery and routing and billing and booking and things like that. So CRM is tough. It kind of just covers everything. What we see is because it's outbound, what we're doing is how are we managing the stage? Where are they? What have we done with them? Do I need reminders? Do I need to-dos? Do I need notes? Do I want to see the history of this thing? The other thing that's really important when you think about doing outbound is making sure that if someone's in that funnel, they're only in it once, right? If imagine the like nightmare scenario where we actually are turning my house into my neighbor's job into their neighbor's job, and imagine that's like sounds like a dream, right? I just went down the street and got
Yeah.
every house 10 in a row. You kept grabbing all of that neighborhood over and over and over again. What are the other neighbors' experiences like? You've just now sent them 10 emails and 10 text messages and 10 phone calls because you keep re-indexing on that neighborhood. So doing a lot of outbound specific stuff in terms of protecting the consumer from like potential harm
Mhm.
becomes really, really important when you think about doing a cold process versus what a existing customer management tool, FSM, CRM, doesn't have to think about that stuff. And it doesn't think about that stuff.
Mhm. Okay. So where exactly does GlassHous fit in a company's growth? Once you're at like that, maybe 100,000 a year, you start thinking about marketing, start thinking about growing a little bit more, getting your first couple trucks, things like that, like kind of turning into a real business. Like where does GlassHous fit in that? Is it, the very first thing you should do? Is it something you should do once you have a little bit more footing? Like where exactly does that fit?
I see how it can fit with so we have customers as small as $100,000 a year.
Okay.
I have customers as big as over $100 million a year.
Okay.
So multi-state, multi-brand to
Mhm.
literally one person.
Okay.
Those use cases are very different. Their goals are very different. Um, Mentioned my wife and I bought a home service business. It was a franchise. We launched a franchise over this past summer, and it was the most successful launch in that franchise's brand history.
Oh, wow.
The only thing we did different was this. And what we saw was that they want you to go and get 10 or 15 leads per week, estimates,
Yeah.
and 25, 30, 35 a week. Not a problem. Consistently driving additional traffic. And about 30 to 40% of the business could be directly attributed to going outbound to those neighborhoods where we're already doing estimates and then creating more demand. And so you could make an argument about like launch with this. You're going to get to market faster. You're going to grow your business faster. We're already expanding the business, buying multiple more vans going into spring. We're going to triple the size of the business in a year. Should be about $1 million revenue business within a year from launch. So we
Okay.
can go from 0 to $1 million in a year. That who doesn't want to do that? Everybody wants to
Yeah.
do that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's starting a business wants that. Now, mid-market. Well, we've got a team of people. What are they doing? They're calling back to customers. They're trying to drum up interest in the market. We've got some dedicated customer success reps or outbound sellers or, people trying to create demand. Where do they go? We give them more people to call, more people to email, more people to talk to. We can basically give them a bigger pool to fish to swim in
Okay.
if for what you're already doing. We're at $5 or $10 million a year. Cool. We've got a different strategy for how we do this, but it's still important. And then when you get to like $100 million a year, which good on you, that's awesome, right? You're like, we made it.
Mhm.
You're gonna run out of places to put money. That's my biggest customers' problems. They're like, if I put more money into local service ads, I will get nothing.
Yeah.
It has totally pinned out on the value of additional investment there. And so we need to invest more in other outbound strategies because we cannot continue to grow if we don't find new ways to do so.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So a life cycle matters based on your business. So the application comes from your goals based on where you are in that journey.
Okay. So if, some of the people listening maybe wanted to learn a little bit more, where would be a great spot for them to do that?
So I'll do my inbound digital marketing part of this, right? So our
Yeah.
website, come to our
Mhm.
website,
Yeah.
glasshouse.biz.
I'll leave a link, guys, for GlassHous. I'll leave it below.
GlassHous.biz is easy to remember. I'm sure there's a link in the comments. You can schedule a demo right there on the call. We try to make it easy to buy. Pricing's on the website. You can schedule a call with our team on the website. There's videos on the website of the product, full transparency about everything, because that's kind of what we're all about,
Yeah.
is creating transparency in a market. So yeah, our website gives you pretty much every answer you could possibly want.
Okay. Do you think that there's anything else here that people could find value or maybe something we didn't talk about, about how this could be beneficial to them?
This is still new enough that nobody else is doing it. And that's the thing that we get really excited about here, right? So we have a relatively small team. We've been doing this for about a year and a half. And so we are applying some of the best practices from other industries, specifically outbound sales, best practices from things like software sales and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it's still pretty new and novel here. So when you want to create a strategy that is I talked to a lot of home service providers, and some of them have already had successful exits. And when you talk to some of the ones that are already sitting in Scottsdale, retired in their 40s, which literally I just talked to a guy the other day, said, well, I was first at this strategy in this market. Oh, I was first at that strategy. I really did the digital thing, digital marketing in my market before anybody else was. They were still using paper. We're using iPads. We did Service Titan before anybody else. And so we had better service and delivery. There's been these tools, but if you go and ask the people who are sitting in their early retirement, have already exited their business, what they did to get there, they're going to tell you what they did 10 years ago to get there. And if you take that 10-year-old strategy and apply it today, it's probably not going to have the same results it did 10 years ago
Yeah.
because the world is totally different now.
Yeah.
And so what we are super stoked about is this looks to us like one of the first truly novel opportunities that has come along in a while for
Mhm.
those people who want to truly embrace it, make it foundational to their business. I use one of our customers as an example. They went from 9 million a year in revenue to $20 million a year in revenue when they started doing outbound sales,
Mhm.
and they did it in about a year and a half.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So it was it easy? No. You know what else is really hard? Failure, super hard.
Yeah.
Not being
Yeah.
successful, super painful.
Yeah.
Being successful, also super painful. So just choose which level of pain you want and the outcome you want associated with that. And is it gonna like be uncomfortable to learn a new motion? Hell yeah. Is it gonna be hard? Absolutely, to do something you've never done before. But it's like a different opportunity, which that's why I just get out of bed every morning super stoked about it.
I feel like I feel like this quote kind of sums it up for me at least. Sometimes you don't have to be the best. You just have to be different. That's why I feel like, a lot of people have kind of come back around, I guess, to door knocking. I know in like 2007, 2008, that was kind of like sort of the big thing with door knocking. Then everybody kind of moved into, Google, Facebook, all this stuff. And then now people are door knocking again. I feel like to separate yourself, you just have to be different than what everybody else is doing. Shock the market, get people interested that way, opposed to, just being another fish, if that means anything to you.
It means a ton to me. I've said that to my teams that I've led for years, actually, is like just being different is often enough because now you're being compared to nothing because you just look
Exactly.
and feel different.
Yeah.
And your markets are big. If you're in home services, you don't have to be in the biggest, you don't have to be in LA or Houston or Dallas to have the big market. You would be shocked how dense the population is within your territory or your operating area
Yeah.
if you haven't really looked. There are millions of dollars of business happening in your market
Mhm.
that you can pull towards you without sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. You just have to go get it. And when you think about people saying, well, I have to go make myself successful, okay, but let's find a tool that we can employ with a strategy that helps us actually go be proactive
Mhm.
versus waiting for good things to happen to us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Jimmy. I think everybody, is really going to enjoy this one. It was a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to provide us all with some value today. Guys, I'm going to leave a link below in the description if you want to check out their website, learn a little bit more. We're all about, providing the community here with value and, not only in the ways that we do business, but also, other ways that you can market, other ways that you can grow your business. And any way that we can be of service here. So thank you, Jimmy. It was a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this one.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.